Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Lynn Lowdown. I'm Dani Vittori, and today we welcome on two members from the Center for Law and Education. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Great to be here. Thank you for having us.
Of course. So first off, would you mind just introducing yourselves and your title within the organization?
Sure. I'm Fran Smith, and I'm the Managing Director.
Great.
I'm Kochenour, and I'm the Legal Director.
So we will be talking specifically about a program you're running in Lynn, but first of all, for people who aren't aware of you, what really is your mission and what communities do you serve?
Sure. The Center for Law and Education is a nonprofit resource advocacy and support organization, and it's committed to advancing the right of all students to a high-quality public education. We serve the whole state of Massachusetts. We're rooted in civil rights and ed reform law. CLE addresses systemic barriers that impede low-income students, disproportionately students of color, English learners, immigrant students, and students with disability from learning to high standards and staying in school to learn and receive a high school diploma. We were founded in 1969, and we engage in legislative and administrative policy advocacy at the federal, state, and local levels, and we played a key role in shaping major provisions of state laws and regulations governing federal education programs as well. Title I, Individuals with Disabilities Act, and the Perkins Act, for example. We've been around for 6 decades, and what probably we've litigated landmark cases that, for example, articulated the right of African American students to equal educational opportunities, ensuring students facing disciplinary exclusions get due process rights, and establishing the right of students with disabilities, even if they are incarcerated or they're detained in youth facilities, to receive meaningful and appropriate specialized instruction. As the managing director, my role is fundraising, daily administrative operations, collaborative work on educational policy issues, and fostering collaborations, opportunities for collective work, which is why we're here in Lynn, because we want to work with families, students, schools, community groups, educators, to ensure that the students with special needs in Lynn are getting the best access to the best quality education. I want to turn it over to...
Sure,
All
yeah.
right.
For just kind of a brief, thank you, Fran, for that summary. So I'm the legal director at the Center for Law and Education, and so with my colleagues, that means I'm responsible for kind of setting the direction of the organization in terms of the types of issues that we're focusing on, kind of the different positions we want to take, and what avenues we pursue to get change, whether that is through court, whether that is through working kind of on the ground level with schools, whether it's through working at the state level with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education.
And you cover such a wide range. I know today we're talking about the All Aboard campaign, which was launched very recently. You just got the funding for it, you said, back in December. So would you be able to give a little bit about what this program specifically covers, what communities you're going to be in?
Yeah, of course. So, as Fran mentioned, we have a long history at CLE of advocating for the rights of students with disabilities and working to ensure that all students have access to the same educational standards and are learning the same things. And the All Aboard campaign is focused within the world of assessment within students with disabilities. So I want to talk a little bit about what that means with the law, and then kind of what that means practically for Massachusetts, what that means for Lynn. So all students under federal law have the right to learn to the same content standards. And so that's, you may have heard the words curriculum frameworks every now and again, and that's what the state has said, okay, here's what all kids need to learn. These are our curriculum frameworks, everyone gets to learn this. And then we have the MCAS, the Massachusetts Comprehensive Assessment System, which has been in the news for other reasons around graduation recently. But this is Massachusetts measuring how are our kids doing against these standards. And they all have to be measured on the grade level standards, except for this one small exception, which is for students with the most significant cognitive disabilities. They can be assessed on a lower level, on lower below grade level standards. It's a very narrow exception. And so we were looking kind of at the data around this, and that lower assessment is called the MCAS Alt. And we noticed that statewide, consistently in Massachusetts, more students were being placed on this lower track than was expected under the provisions of the federal law that kind of sets this up. And then looking further at it, you can see that students from low-income families, students of color, and multilingual learners are disproportionately more likely to be put on this lower track. And then we would see as well through our own representation of students, as well as working with other attorneys at regional legal aid organizations throughout the state, that there were students being placed on this MCAS alt track that were not students with the most significant cognitive disabilities, which was supposed to be like who this exception is limited to. And so we're like, okay, something's going on here. There's not only are there more students on this track than should be expected, the types of students that are on it don't necessarily line up with what federal law was anticipating. And so why does this matter, right? I just told you that all kids have the right to learn to the same standards. And just being on that lower track doesn't mean you don't get to learn to those same standards. You get assessed on lower standards, but you should still have access to the same content grade level wise that everyone else does. The problem is in practice that doesn't always happen. We have seen that once you're assessed on these lower standards, the expectations for a student can be lower and the education can kind of be lowered as well. And so you kind of in practice, even though you're not supposed to lose access to the grade level things, you do. We were focused on the state level for the past 5 or 6 years working on this, and that has really shown us we need to have a parallel ground-up approach, working with families, working with communities, working with districts, and that's where the Tower Foundation funding came in.
Working with, it was?
Lynn, Lawrence, and Haverhill were the
Okay.
3 towns we were going to be focused on, yes.
Great. And you mentioned this MCAS alternate. So let's say a student gets assessed, put on this track, and you realize they don't fit these federal requirements, like you said. Is there a way to then, like you said, kind of switch them back to the, I don't know what the word would be, like more standard educational track?
Yeah, so it's a decision that has to be made as part of the IEP process for students with disabilities. And so just like any other provision of an IEP, you have the right to either accept or reject it or challenge it in some way. So you can challenge it through that realm.
Okay, all right. And I said this program is quite new. You said you just got the funding. So kind of looking forward as you're going through it, working with families, communities, what are your goals for this specific All Aboard program? Like what would you really like to accomplish, let's say in the next year or so?
Yeah, Fran, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. So we're fighting to end the misuse of the MCAS alt in those communities, which unfairly places students with disabilities on lower academic track, sometime as early as 3rd grade. This practice disproportionately affects students, that Sky just said. So the grant will support training for parents, students, and advocates to challenge these harmful placements, legal representation for affected students, and data-driven advocacy to push for policy changes. CLE will work with schools to promote reforms, ensuring all students receive high-quality education they deserve. Just as no child begins school without a desire to learn, no educator embarks on a career without wanting to foster children's educational success. And that we should be able to support and tap into that and reignite the possibilities of doing so to ensure that kids are not disproportionately assigned to the alt, and that only the kids with the most severe cognitive disabilities end up there. Right. I just want to say, when I first came here, I was really disturbed by this because I have a great nephew in Fall River, and he had some severe disabilities as an infant, and he had early intervention, and by the 2nd grade or so, his mom asked me to come to an IEP meeting, and they were trying to put him on the alternative MCAS alt. Yeah. I actually didn't know as much as I know now about it, but we prevented that from happening, and he's graduating from Fall River and got accepted into Mass Maritime. Wow, he's been an incredible student leader. The president of DACA just has, and that's the point. With the knowledge and information, you can advocate at the school level for your child to get the supports that they need so they can succeed and meet the same standards. Do you want to add anything?
No.
So you were saying in a place, like Lynn, certain communities, that's what you want to be doing, giving people the tools that they need to really be able to fight it, because even, I'll admit, I don't understand many aspects of this, so I wouldn't really know how to go about either accepting, denying, fighting it.
Yeah, and I think too, the goal is to do it in a collaborative manner, because these decisions are happening at the school level with educators and with parents. And so I think it is about providing not just parents kind of with the knowledge of what their rights are in this area, but also trying to work with educators to develop policies to ensure that the determinations that are being made about students are as accurate as possible.
Making sure that they're placed on correct tracks that help get them their full potential, right? Like you were saying, graduate and do whatever they desire to be doing as they get older.
Right.
Right. And I said, this sounds like an interesting program, and that I am still learning about this myself, but if people are interested to learn more, how would they go about doing this, through your organization?
Yeah, so we are going to be launching in the coming months trainings in Lynn.
Oh, great.
For parents, and so we'll be able to provide information on that. If there's anyone who wants to either learn more about the topic or is interested in the training, they can always send us an email to our general email address of cle@cleweb.org.
Or you can use mine.
Or Fran's as well. You can email Fran directly. But there will be trainings coming to Lynn specifically about this for parents, students, and educators.
Great. We'll be looking forward. We'll be looking onto that. And this is a good point to say. I do have to wrap up in a moment, but was there any other points that I hadn't mentioned that you wanted to make sure you put in?
I don't think so.
Just that I think I forgot to mention that we are a backup center for the legal aid organizations across the Commonwealth. In the last couple of years, we've been working with them to really emphasize the importance of a right to a high-quality education and not dummy down and not ending up in programs that don't allow you to meet your great potential. And we are very concerned about the decoupling of the MCAS with the high school diploma and what's going to happen moving forward, especially to students who used to be on the MCAS alt, to students with special needs, because we know that there's still stigma about poor kids, kids of color, kids whose first language isn't English, and kids with disabilities not being able to achieve at the same standards as kids that don't have those challenges. So we've been in the business for 55 years, and we know that with information, knowledge, and advocacy, schools and families can work together to get what the young people need so they can have great lives and be participants in a democracy.
Yes. Knowledge is power, right? And making sure that all children get the education they deserve.
Yeah, knowledge is definitely power.
Great. Well, thank you for coming on to give both me and our audience some of this knowledge, and I really look forward to seeing what you're going to do in the future.
Thank you so much for having us.
Of course. Thank you anytime. And once again, this has been the Lynn Lowdown. I'm Dani Vittori, and we'll see you next week with more guests.